You
I
shouldn't be a
really
fan
like.
of any U.S. president, period. So that's really the easiest metric. And once you step into the role of empire, you are doing the work of colonialism. You're doing the work of imperialism. Neither of these parties are for the actual betterment of society, be it in the United States or internationally. And then you start going down rabbit holes and paths, and you really realize that it's always been this way. They're just really good at PR.
Peace and blessings, everybody. I am your brother, Orina, all the way from the motherland, all the way from Kenya, Nairobi, nation's capital. Guys, I mean, special is a super understatement. And I think the word of the day is super, super today. Super understatement. This woman needs no introduction, but I'll give her a good introduction because she's one of the people who inspires me every single day to speak out against white supremacy, to speak out against oppression. So let me give her a good introduction. I wrote something. I had to write something.
Okay.
One of the most prolific voices of our time, one of the most important voices of our time, author, artistic intellectual, black radical, and most importantly, a revolutionary. She has transcended her celebrity identity to a point whereby I don't even look at her like a celebrity, I look at her like a revolutionary. She's one of the people who inspire me every day to speak out and to speak against white supremacy and against oppression. And I'm happy to have her on Sell Afrika to Africans. Please welcome the incomparable, the beautiful, the powerful Amanda Seals. Amanda, how are you doing today?
Honored. Thank you for such a stellar intro. I appreciate it.
No. That's the first time I've ever written an intro for a guest. The first time.
Yes.
The first time.
I feel special. Super special.
There you go. There you go. How are you doing today? How's life? How's everything? How are you feeling?
I actually took the weekend to just focus on putting clothes away. So I really feel like I let my brain rest a bit, or as much as it could. I mean, we also got the joy of watching idiot American Jake Paul get punched out by Anthony Joshua. So that brought a light. And also the other guy, Andrew Tate, he got punched out by a black man as well. So the brothers was in the ring doing a whole other level of fighting than I think they signed up for. So that was really a nice way to spend the weekend. And then now, we're back to work. We're back to the consistent effort of decolonizing, of, really just trying to inspire people to change how they're thinking. I did a special talk on my Patreon last night, and Patreon is a site where you can subscribe and support, all different types of creatives. And so mine is a $5 subscription, but I did a special last night about Nicki Minaj because I think a lot of people would very easily see her involvement with Turning Point and the racist MAGAs of the United States as simply just a celebrity trying to pander and write it off. And I'm trying to always encourage people to challenge themselves to think further than what their first mind would say in regards to things like this, because we've been so indoctrinated, particularly here in the United States, that we can't just trust our first thought about politics. We have to do research. We have to push ourselves to think further. We have to demand we have to train ourselves to ask why, because that's not something we're trained to do.
I've been, I know, like we'll talk about that. But before we go to the state of Black America, and like before we go to the meat and potatoes of the whole interview, I just want to know one thing. And I meant it when I said it in the intro. You have transcended. Like, I don't even look at you as entertainer, celebrity. No. I look at you as a revolutionary, as a black radical.
Thank you.
Where did that love of of Black people, of advocating for Black people? Where did that start? I've always wanted to know that. Where did that start? Because for me, it started with my history teacher. But what is it for you? Yeah.
Well, my mother is from Grenada, and that's who I was raised by. And my father is from the United States, but he didn't really have any input into like what shaped me. But I will say that I was always keenly aware that I was both Grenadian and Black American. Like that's always been a dual consciousness that I carry. And in so, you know, I come from on both sides. Black Americans, Grenadians are revolutionary people, artisans, and folks who are very very grounded in the necessity to continue to push back against, you know, colonial rule, etc. So like that's where I come from internally. Like that's in my DNA. I grew up in a home that was always playing Bob Marley. My mother was never about white people like being special. I mean, I think I saw her cry for Diana. I saw her cry when Princess Diana died. But otherwise, I was never raised to believe that, you know, white people were special or in a level of hierarchy. You know, I was always grounded in the awareness of my culture and of Blackness. Like that was always made aware to me, whether it was in the music I was hearing or even like the television that I was watching. You know, I was watching Cosby Show and Different World and you know, Michael Jackson, and you know, like there was always, I was always surrounded by imagery of Black folks that were positive. And I think that's really the ground, you know, the groundwork that was laid. I was also very fortunate to have always had at least one Black person that was around me to protect me. So whether that was my first grade teacher, Miss Channel, my second grade teacher, Ms. La Bowman. Then when I danced at Disney when I was 8 years old and I was with all these white kids, it was the first time I'd ever experienced racism. But our chaperone was a Black woman named Jennifer, you know, and she made sure that I was held close and secure. And so I think that's really where it like took root. And then I feel like I was on a path that was bigger than me. You know, even when I went to school for high school, I went to the Visual and Performing Arts magnet at Dr. Phillips High School. And even though there was all these white kids, we doing Black shows, you know, like, and I found my way into a group of Black folks that were very grounded in their culture and, you know, helped me expand my understanding of my Black American culture. And then when I went to college, I was in the conservatory for acting, but I ended up getting kicked out of the conservatory. And that actually allowed me to have the time to take classes that I would never have had the time to take if I was in the conservatory. So I got to take all these Black classes, you know, African-American authors, Black women writers, the history of the literature of the Harlem Renaissance. And once I did that, I was like, well, I'm not going to go back to the conservatory because they had told me I have to take a year off. And I created my own major. They didn't have a Black Studies major at the time. So I created a Black Studies major. And then I went on to do Black Studies as my major for my master's. And when I went to go to get my master's, my entry essay was about knowing that I wanted to use my art to speak for the advancement and the empowerment of Black people, and understanding that I would need more than just my own experience to do that in an effective way. I would need an academic background. And that's why I wanted to get my master's. And so I was accepted to the Institute for Research in African American Studies at Columbia. And so, you know, it's just been a consistent growth. I think the seed was there from birth, and there was just always people around and art around that germinated that seed.
Wow. Because, you know, for me, it was my history teacher. You know, in Kenya, the Pan-African level is the consciousness, Pan-African, Black, you know, Black pride level is not that strong. It's not like actually Uganda, which we share a border with, is probably more conscious and more Pan-African than us. Yeah, yeah. So for me, it was my history teacher, who inspired me to learn more about Garvey, to learn more about Booker T. Washington, and that really changed my life completely. And it just goes to
around what year in school was that?
So that was 2018. That was when I was finishing high school.
Okay.
I was 18 years. Yeah, and there's a topic in our history book called Pan-Africanism and something, and in that topic, there's only 3 Pan-Africans who were actually in that topic. It was Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington, and W.E.B. Du Bois. And the problem is that each of those Pan-Africans had only 3 or 4 pages. And I was like, no. And that, I didn't know much about Garvey at that time, but I knew that, oh man, you can't summarize Garvey's story. Garvey needs a library. He needs you can't summarize Garvey's story in 4 pages. No, you can't. But my history teacher took time to really, even he was going to the internet and searching Marcus Garvey's speeches and all, and that really inspired me. So when I left high school and I just started doing my homework, man, and I started learning more about Black history, learning more about Pan-Africanism, learning more about white supremacy, that really, really changed my whole outlook about everything. It was like Neo in the Matrix. That's how I felt. Yeah.
No, but that's really how it feels. Because there's such a block that is put up, and created. I mean, it's not like you're making it up. I mean, there really is a complete effort to keep that linear, that connection quieted. And I was talking last night on my page about that, because on my Patreon about that, because once you do start understanding that everything in the world is connected, at first it can be really disheartening, because you see how all of the negative is connected. You see how all of the duplicitous efforts of the CIA and the Mossad and MI6 are connected, how colonialism is connected. You see the tentacles through which they are, Africa and the Caribbean and South America and Latin America. And you're just like, oh my gosh. And it seems insurmountable. And then you have to remember, well, if everything is connected, then everything is connected. And that's what Pan-Africanism really is saying, that if all of the colonialism can be connected, then we too can be connected in our power.
Exactly.
That's literally all it's saying. I mean, it's not a complex concept. And I think what people may miss is that it gets very often presented as, oh, this is an economic thing that we need to do. This is a revolutionary thing we need to do. And it's not to say that that's not the case, but it's also a spiritual thing that has to happen, right? Because when you understand the ways that Africa was disseminated and dissolved, you realize that it's not simply about the taking of resources in the physical, but it's also the taking of resources and the slicing and bifurcating of individuals and families and nations and spirituality, because the people are the land. So if you are taking the land from the people, then you are also severing the spiritual tie to that. I mean, look at the Maasai, right? You've got Maasai cosplaying on their own land for colonizers. And I wanted to read this quote. This is my favorite Marcus Garvey quote, and it's in my latest book, What Would the Ancestors Say? And he says, we must canonize our own saints, create our own martyrs, and elevate to positions of fame and honor Black men and women who have made their distinct contributions to our racial history. And what he's talking about is the fact that we as a people must make that choice, instead of waiting for colonizers and oppressors to determine which Black people should be considered important, because that's what so often happens. They do that, and then folks scurry behind and say, yeah. No, we must be the ones who are saying, this is who we care about. this is who we want to identify as a leader, or this is who we want to remove, right, from our communities. And I think it's really a time right now where we're watching for instance, in the Sahel, like we're watching the active application of Pan-Africanism on many levels. And I try my best to keep that dialogue alive, particularly among folks in the United States, because we are watching the scramble for attempting to hold on to colonialism. And it can be really disheartening. And so, I really try my best. I do a show every Wednesday called Views from Amanda Land on YouTube. And it's a political education show. And we have guests, and I say it's the news and truths by any joke necessary. So there's humor involved, but ultimately it's trying to not just tell people the news, but teach people the news. Because what happens so often is the news is told without any context. There's no historical context. There's no moral or ethical context. It's just information that's thrown at you. And quite often that information is coming from resources or coming from sources that are not just in their efforts to inform. There's some other ulterior motive. But I, in my heart, when you talk about like, oh, I'm not a celebrity, because I'm a teacher. I've always been a teacher. Like that's always been at the crux of my personality. And, when we talk about the news on my show, it's to also give people the past, the how did we get here of it all, right? Like you can't talk about Kenya without talking about the process of how we got to the president of Kenya spinning in a chair behind like you can't, and you can't do that without talking about the shifting way that colonialism presents itself, right? Once it became like no longer cool to be colonizers, they just changed their name. They just changed the way they operate. They became aid providers. Which is literally just another way of keeping the foot and on the neck of nations. And I just feel like that's something that I'm really glad that your teacher did is give you more context, because that's something that doesn't happen enough. And part of the radical Black tradition is edutainment, which is entertaining and educating at the same time.
Amanda, your book, I like the title of your book, What Would the Ancestors Say? And it has Harriet Tubman with a gun, because there's some Black people who deserve to be shot by Harriet Tubman. I know, yes. I know. Yeah, I know. But one thing, let me remix that title to What Would the Ancestors Do? There's an interview. I said, if our ancestors were allowed to come to Earth from the spiritual realm for a day, they will do one thing. I've always believed that they will do only one thing to us Black people. They will whoop the piss out of us. They will whoop us because we are sleeping. Look, like I always say this, we have the numbers. We have, here in Africa, we have everything at our disposal to ensure that we are great. The global African race, we have everything. We have the best minds. We have the best resources. We have the best, we have everything to reclaim our greatness as a people, but we are not using it. So I truly believe that our ancestors will whoop the piss out of us and to tell us, hey, wake up.
Well, I think, we became very colonized. And I know that feels like a very kind of cliche phrase, but when I say colonized, I mean not simply that our land became colonized, but our minds did, in terms of shifting what we consider to be valuable. Possessions became not even possessions. The quest for possessions became the drive. That became the ambition. And that becomes a part of the continued effort of capitalism to pretend that there's scarcity when there is not, to make things valuable that are not. I mean, I saw a really interesting video the other day where this man was saying that diamonds are actually not the most unique scarcity mineral. He said actually you can find diamonds anywhere in the universe. He was like, diamonds are in abundance. There's entire planets made of diamonds. He said, no, the actual most valuable and most scarce element that we have is wood. He said, because wood is life. So you can't find wood on other planets. He said, in terms of resources, that's actually the most unique. There's no wood anywhere else. And that brings you back to our indigenous knowledge, which is that Earth is actually the most important resource to protect, right? The land that nurtures us, that speaks to us, that heals us, etc. And capitalism has turned the land into a commodity. And so our ancestors understood that is not the case. And I feel like they would beat us for falling in with these folks and their very problematic and destructive mindset of let's just take without giving. And that's really what's happening. I mean, we as a people take from each other without giving. I had to cut somebody off the other day because I'm just like, I'm always giving to y'all. You ain't never brought me. Damn. Even on my birthday. So, but that's a part of our culture. Right? Like that's and that's global. I would love to say that's just an American thing, but it's not. And Americans have people in the US have a very romanticized view of the continent. They think that there's just peace and love, and it's like, I don't know, there's just this idea that everybody on the continent is woke and aware, and the fact of the matter is colonization has been a global effort.
Yeah.
And it's been effective. So your ancestors, my ancestors, they're whooping all of us.
Oh man. And you know what? Maybe we need it.
Not maybe, we do.
Yeah,
we do. I mean, I don't think everyone needs it at the same level.
Yeah. Of course.
Just give me a tap on the hand. However, I just think that unfortunately that is going to come though. That whooping that you're talking about, that's coming, and it's happening in real time in the ways that we are seeing climate change. We're seeing the earth say, this is what's going on. This is what we're going to do. And unfortunately, it's the people of the global South that feel it the most. And that's what I am realizing has been deeply lacking in not only my activism, but also in my Pan-Africanism, is that, climate change affects everyone in the global South far more than it does in Europe and in the United States. And thus our Pan-Africanism, again, can be tied to that, even if it's not about economics, right? Even if it's not about land, it can be about simply just how do we come together to acknowledge that all of us are going to feel the brunt in a far more destructive way of climate change than those who are causing it.
I agree. Amanda, if there's one thing that I've always wondered is, and this is a global issue, including here in Africa, in America, in Europe, that there seems to be some sort of because you know you've been in those spaces. You've been in entertainment spaces. You've been in like you've seen it all. But you've always stayed consistent in your voice and in your content and in your like you have always stayed consistent in standing firm with black people and never scared and never holding no punches. That is something that I've always admired from you.
Thank you.
The problem with majority of black entertainers is that they don't do that. Are they scared? Are they intimidated, or do they want to protect their interests? Because this is something even here in Kenya, even here, yeah.
I think it's all the above. You know, what a lot of people don't understand about entertainers is that, you know, by nature of the job, you are accustomed to applause. And there's an exchange that's happening. You are performing and people are applauding. And that give and take is what drives a lot of entertainers. You know, you'll see a lot of entertainers who maybe their fame wanes, or, you know, they no longer are in the same spotlight, and they end up getting addicted to narcotics because they're missing that exchange. They're missing that chemical reaction that happens when you do the thing that you do and people respond. And so I think even on a basic level, you're dealing with a type of human that lives to get. And so they are essentially going to continue in that practice. And they're going to do, there's an addiction that happens in that. So you're going to keep doing what is going to allow you to continue to live in that comfort of performing and getting the response. So for a lot of people, I don't think it's just about money. I think it's also about, well, this is how I exist and I can't let anything get in the way. And that is insecure. And there, you know, there's an insecurity attached to that. You know, when you're dealing with a lot of these performers, you're dealing with people who also they have trauma. You know, they have trauma, and performing characters allows them to hide in other bodies. It's deep, baby. It's deep. And I am a very unique, you know, person. I'm a unique case. I'm somebody who was always myself before I was a performer. I mean, even when I was 8 and my mom was like, oh, let's go to this audition, I was like, you just want me to go for you. You know, like I always had a consciousness around my individualism outside of this entertainment. I mean, I was a gymnast, and I was so mad that I had to miss gymnastics to go to an audition. You know, I remember being in 5th grade and I was at the nature walk, and my mom came and picked me up to take me to an audition. And I was so pissed that I had to miss the 5th grade trip. Mind you, I ended up being in the movie. Like all of these are auditions that I got that actually ended up shaping my career to be on Cop and a Half and My Brother and Me. But the person, Amanda Seals, was like, I want to go on the nature walk. So that was never a centralized interest. It was just a capability. You know, like people have a trade. Acting is my trade. I'm able to do it. Now that's different than creating. And I think that's what you have to understand the differences. What you're talking about are a lot of people who are performers, but they are not necessarily creatives. And there's a difference, because artists stand on it. And, you know, you look at someone like Amy Sherald, who did the portrait of Michelle Obama that hangs in the Smithsonian Portrait Gallery for the presidents. She had a show coming up at the Smithsonian, and they told her that she needed to take down, that they weren't going to show some of the pieces that she had put in the show because they felt it was inappropriate. And she said, fuck y'all, and canceled the show. Now, someone who is not an artist, but who is there for the applause, right? They may have compromised because they would do the exchange in their mind and say, well, big deal. I take down a piece, but I still get the acclaim. I still get the access. But if you're really a creative, then you know that none of that matters more than the thing you've created. and why you created it. And so that really is the difference between me and a lot of my peers, that they are performers and I am an artist.
Artistic intellectual.
You said it. And so, that's really at the base of it all. We are watching. Also, there's a commercialization of these art forms that really lets people in who have kind of figured out the cheat code, right? Which is like, oh, I just need to do this type of thing to get this type of money and access and fame. And again, if you're a performer, you can make yourself look like an artist. Right? So, and it's not the same for everybody. I mean, I just saw one of my co-stars from Insecure, Kendrick Sampson. I just ran into him in Houston the other day. And I mean, he's been a consummate organizer and activist while still doing movies and TV. Like, he's never compromised his commitment to the movement in that regard, right? And you see legends like, Harry Belafonte, who did the same. I mean, again, we wish they were in so many numbers that we couldn't name them. But we also know that we're fighting a much bigger beast. And there really is a courage that has to be a part of that as well. And whether you're an artist, creative, or performer, or just, a teacher, courage does not get distributed evenly.
Like I put you, with the league of Belafonte, Makeba. Even now, they're really good examples, by the way. I really admire Killer Mike. I really admire David Banner. So, I mean, like, when I see you guys, I'm like, oh, man, we need more Amanda Seals. Like, we need more. I mean, like, we need, because
that's the work that, I mean, that's really what I've committed myself to doing is really helping people to decolonize. I don't think folks really understand in the United States. I mean, we have been under such a extreme level of psychological operations for 60 years that we have an entire population of people who are essentially mentally ill because they have been so deeply propagandized that they absolutely don't know who they are. They don't know their own history. They don't even know how to identify the truth. They can't tell fact from fiction. They can't tell opinion from news. They have had fear so systematically injected into their lifestyle, into their existence, that they're molecularly different. And so when you're dealing with an entire population like that, you have to actually do the opposite of that psychological operation. You have to de-wire, you have to rewire. Now, I am a neurodivergent, I'm autistic, and that allows me to have much more of a handle on my brain than the brainwashers do. And, it is neurodivergent people who are often involved in organizing work and in revolution work, largely in part because we have a justice sensitivity, but also because our brains are less susceptible to being coerced and influenced by outside forces. And our brains operate in a constant effort of reorganizing and checking and trying to figure out. And so because of that, there's a constant shift that's hard to nail down. And so what I'm trying to awaken in folks is their ability to identify their own neurodivergence, if at all. And if they don't have neurodivergence, how to undo the colonizing efforts of stopping you from asking why, of disconnecting you from spirit, of disconnecting you from nature and its power and its effectiveness, and of disconnecting you from your empathy, which is your superpower, your ability to see and feel beyond yourself. That is what ends up inspiring courage in most of us. Being able to feel other people's pain it ends up pushing you to do things that you may not necessarily have done for yourself because it's so much stronger. And there's a reason why in Octavia Butler's book, Parable of the Sower, the main character who ends up being the one to lead these people to, you know, a new future, a new possibility of life in the midst of dystopian degradation. There's a reason why she is an empath of the highest level, like so much so that if you get punched, she feels the physical blow. I mean, that wasn't just like some added little flavor for razzle dazzle. It's because that level of awareness of other pain and other pleasure, it connects us in a way that I believe also inspires our strength, you know? So we are not just feeling other people's pain. We're not just feeling other people's pleasure. We're able to feel other people's courage, which gives us more courage. We're able to feel other people's bravery, right? Which gives us more bravery. We're able to feel other people's joy, which gives us something more to fight for.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, Palestine really awakened that for me. And, wow. And so I'm trying to do my best through my art, through my show views from Amandaland, through my videos on Instagram, I'm trying to do my best to help reconnect people to that. And I think that's really something that our ancestors would be the most frustrated about, is how we have been so effectively disconnected from each other.
I like that. Let's quickly talk about politics. And by the way, I'm really happy that you criticize both sides, Democrats, Republicans, equally, because all of them are not for Black people.
Trash.
What? To what point did you come to that awakening? Have you always voted one side?
I was always a Democrat because that's always what you're told to be as a Black person. And I also fell for the Obamaganda, etc. I mean, but again, before the internet and before the availability of all this information, you're really just getting your information from mainstream media. And if you don't know any better, you think mainstream media is objective. It is not. And so for me, the real turning point was after October 7th, and just watching simultaneously the truth happening on my phone, being spoken from the voices of Palestinians in real time, and then seeing the lies being voiced by Kamala Harris, by Anthony Blinken, by Matthew Miller, by Joseph Biden, and by mainstream media. You seeing them two side by side, like how we're sitting here side by side, was just, I mean, there's no arguing after that. There's nothing to actually try to figure out. The proof is in the pudding. It's in front of you. And so, you know, once I also saw the willingness of Democrats to continue to fund Israel and this genocide, it allowed me to once and for all, disassociate from them. And then there was a whole smear campaign that Black Democrats had against me on the internet for challenging Kamala Harris to actually go against the genocide, not only because it's wrong, but also because if there was going to be any opportunity for her to garner a long-lasting support, because she was never going to win, because it was rigged from the beginning. She was never going to win. But if there was going to be any opportunity for her to have long-lasting support, it was going to be for her to engage with the left, not the centrists. And Democrats have actively ignored socialists, communists, and leftists, even though those of us on the left are always advocating for simply collective liberation and for folks to have access to the basic needs of life, and to stop prioritizing corporations. So those things really led me to the clarity that neither of these parties are for the actual betterment of society, be it in the United States or internationally. And then you start going down rabbit holes and paths, and you really realize that it's always been this way. They're just really good at PR. And so, you know, when Hillary Clinton and these other Zionists say, you know, it's social media that is ruining our kids, well, they're right to a certain extent. They're ruining our kids' ability to be brainwashed by them. That's what's happening. The truth is becoming so much louder than the lie. And so we just have to keep doing that. So you have to keep doing that with this podcast. I have to keep doing that with my podcasts and, you know, my shows and my books, etc. And we have to keep creating connectivity and platform. I came on here because I understand the necessity for me to be connecting with folks internationally who think this way, and that we have to have a strengthened collective. I also understand the necessity to connect with folks intergenerationally that think this way. You're 20 years younger than me. So long after I am, you know, physically able to really be in the fight, hopefully you will just be coming into your prime. Right. Yeah. And so, you know, I understand that. I see the necessity for our generations, 7 behind and 7 forward, to be of a mindfulness. And I know that it's a choice. And so I've made that choice, and I want to connect with people who are also making that choice.
Oh, thank you so much. By the way, you speak about Obama. Obama is really worshipped here because Obama is half Kenyan. I've never been a fan of Obama, and people don't like me saying that, but I really don't give a damn.
You shouldn't be a fan of any U.S. president, period. So that's really the easiest metric. It's not about him being Obama. It's about him being a U.S. president. And once you step into the role of empire, you are doing the work of colonialism. You're doing the work of imperialism. And, you know, no one held a gun to his head. He went into that. So once you make that choice and you accept a Nobel Peace Prize as you're bombing Yemen, you have to understand that you don't deserve respect. You don't deserve to be honored. And just because you were the first Black man in that position, that's actually shameful. It's actually a shame. There should never be a Black president. Not in this current government iteration. No. Until we rewrite the Constitution, no Black person should be stepping into that position saying, I'm proud to be here. Because you are stepping into a system that is bigger than you, that unless you have actually come through with a whole squad to change, you are simply just perpetuating and propping up. And that we cannot support. And that is the decolonizing work we have to do. I mean, I was just with my first grade teacher who I had to really, I'm trying to break her down to understand why she cannot continue to care about Obama in the way that she does. And I feel like I'm chipping away, Orina. I'm chipping away. But I thank you so much for having me here. I thank you so much for even reaching out and for, you know, continuing the work that you're doing, because it's so deeply necessary. It really, really is. And even though you're all the way in Kenya, we feel you here.
Please come back. Come back to the show. We have so much. I had a list, but I know you have to go.
I know, but we got time. We got time. And also, I would love to have you on my show on Views from Amanda Land. So maybe we can tackle that list then.
I'm available. Guys, thank you so much. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Go to Amanda Seal's channel. Go to our Patreon. Please just plug everything, Amanda, before we go. Please.
So you can support the work I'm doing by subscribing to my Patreon. It's only $5. And you'll not only get access to me and my extra content, but you also get access to a really vibrant community of intellectuals, of compassionate people, of creatives who are supporting each other in this work to decolonize not only ourselves, but the world. You can also subscribe to my you can also follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube, Amanda Seals TV. They are actively shadow banning me on both places. So hopefully you'll take time to watch some of the content and to engage with it by commenting. And last but not least, you can support my store, Amanda Land Exports, where you can buy my book as well as pins and artwork, etc. All of the work that I do is funded by you all, by people like you. It's a grassroots effort. I don't have any more contractual deals with corporations, etc. Everything is literally supported by you all and your interest in keeping people like me, artistic intellectuals and radicals and Pan-Africanists, working to destabilize the efforts of the imperial and empire and colonialist movements that, gosh darn it, just seem to keep on going. We got to get rid of it. We got to cut it down. And the only way to do it is to just keep chipping away.
Amanda, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Likewise.
Bye.